Welcome into the Thursday, May the 4th, although I just realized it's going to be all the May the 4th be with you, May the 4th be with you day. All day long. I'm not a big Star Wars guy. Maybe Jeffrey is. We'll talk to him in just a minute. Jeffrey Wright will join momentarily on the myperfectfranchise.net hotline. It is the Oxford Exxon podcast. For those that are looking for Ole Miss baseball, Chase Parham and Brian Rippey posted a pretty big baseball-centric, Ole Miss baseball-centric podcast earlier this morning. That came before Chase was able to confirm a tip that I got yesterday. I sent it to him. He spent the evening working on it. Hunter Elliott, Ole Miss's ace, who has pitched very sparingly this season, had Tommy John surgery yesterday, when I was told. I think Chase has confirmed that. He's still working to find out whether that was the full Tommy John or whether what they kind of call a bridge Tommy John, which is sort of what I suspect. But anyway, we'll get more details on that. But that podcast is available for you in the stream. We'll have a hand raise, guys, tonight. It's pre-recorded also. So Jeffrey Wright will join momentarily. Again, Oxford Exxon, Highway 6 West in Oxford. Don't forget, go to Twitter and hashtag Rebel Ready and at Oxford Exxon. And you can get the really good box seat tickets to the series and I guess SEC season finale of Ole Miss and I think it's Auburn in a couple weeks. So that's there for you. And if you're in the Clinton area, don't forget to stop by the Blue Sky and get those fresh homemade donuts, especially if you play soccer for Clinton High School. Get you a couple dozen before practice today. Make it a good day for you there. I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford studio. Clark Ford in Amory, Mississippi. 662-257-1900 is the number. Call it. Ask for my buddy Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford product you're looking for. He'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours, right to the bottom line. No hassle, no haggle. Get your quote, and then the rest is up to you. Shop it around and do what I've done, what I recommend that you do, and that's hop into a Clark Ford today. 662-257-1900. Jeffrey Wright joins on the myperfectfranchise.net hotline. If you are a displaced corporate executive or you wanting to put your career in your own hands, if you're an experienced entrepreneur looking to diversify, Andy Ludicky can help you. He owns multiple franchises and businesses and uses his expertise to help others find their American dream through a very thorough and free consultation process. So call Andy, put your life and your career in your own hands. It's 100% free, so you have nothing to lose. Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net or contact Andy at myperfectfranchise.net or call him at 404-973-9901. Speaking of, Jeffrey Wright, kind enough to join us now. Jeffrey, how are you?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. It's a beautiful Thursday morning here. Got a busy day ahead, but woke up and
How much of your mood is dictated by the fact that my baseball team is 10 games under 500 and looks just absolutely dreadful?
You know, I wasn't going to start there, but we will. First, the Shohei Ohtani show is just, even when the guy ties his freaking shoes, it's spectacular. I love him. He's going to devastate me in November. I know that. He beat the Cards.
Why are you getting your hopes up?
I don't know. I mean,
Isn't the appropriate way to do this, you just tell yourself he's going to L.A., and then that way, if he does happen to go to Chicago, then it's like the best day of your life, sports fan.
Yeah, and I do.
Wedding, everything aside.
I do think he is going to L.A. I think he's going to be a Dodger. But it makes so much sense for the Cubs, and they've cleared the payroll, and so they could do it. They could do anything.
I'm going to stop you here. This is the problem. I don't disagree with that, but like you cannot, as a sports fan, allow yourself to go there.
No, I know. You're right. You're right. And I need to stop. I need to go back to hopeless and cynical and.
Yeah, the Ricketts, all they do is they just care about printing and making money. The fact that they have money to spend just means that's extra profit for them. That's the thinking you have to go with.
I know. And then there's a part of me, though, that looks back at the decisions that they made involving Rizzo and Bryant and Baez, and I go, I'm not sure they made a wrong decision there. Like, they gave Hayward the bad money, but at the time, it looked like a good contract.
Yeah.
And that contract comes off the books. The Lester contract was genius. They didn't re-sign Bryant, who's a shell of himself. They didn't give Anthony Rizzo the kind of money that he wanted, and it was the right move. He's still a good player, but he's not a great player. He's not a $30 million player. They cut ties with Javier Baez, and as much as I love Javi, he's a shell of himself. They didn't give Wilson Contreras the huge deal. Made perfect sense. So I keep thinking maybe they're gonna be smart. Like I gave a good contract to Swanson. They gave a smart contract to Happ, a smart contract to Nico Horner. I keep thinking just maybe, but you're right. I need to get cynical. If you're so what's up with your Cardinals though? Are you worried? Because look, the Cubs were supposed to be a 500 team. They're a 500 team. The Cardinals were supposed to be a contender. They were supposed to be the best team in the division, and right now they're not.
I mean, I need to preface everything by acknowledging I understand that I am incredibly spoiled as a baseball fan. Half of my life has resulted in a playoff appearance. 4 World Series appearances, 2 World Series titles. Like I want to be perfectly clear. I am not someone that wakes up and thinks, the Cardinals deserve to be the Cardinals deserve to be a contender each and every year. The problem that I have with this team though is, they're unwatchable. They don't really play hard. The pitching was always going to be an issue. I mean, it is. I don't think Cardinals fans that were upset last offseason that they didn't do anything with the pitching staff. I don't think that those people were irrational. I think the biggest. I mean, obviously, Marmol's going to end up being the scapegoat. I'm also though at this point, I'm not sure that he doesn't deserve to be fired because. When you watch them play, I don't think you have to be the best team in baseball, but you do have to try. And it just feels like so many times I'm watching, they don't even try. They look lifeless.
Well, when you don't pitch well and you don't hit well, and you're kind of an older team, you can look lifeless. Even if you can look like the effort's not there, you can look flat. Even when obviously they're major league players, they're trying. But they run the risk of getting a little old, don't they?
Oh, I mean, there's no question on that. But I mean, to me, the thing that's significant is everyone wants to focus on the pitching, and they're 20th in runs allowed. Neil, they're 20th in runs scored too. You know what I mean? It seems like everyone just wants to focus on the pitching as the problem. I think primarily because the more likable players are the position players and the hitters. And to me, it's no, it's not like this team is like Boston where they hit the absolute cover off the baseball and they can't get anyone out. They're not exactly lighting it up at the plate.
No, they're not. They're middle of the pack offensively. I was pulling up their stats right here. I'm having a hard time reading this with my old eyes, but they're 13th offensively, and their pitching is in the mid to late 20s, which is bad. I mean, that's not a great combination. Is it too late though? The 10-21, still 131 games left. There's still lots of time. Do you see a scenario where they figure it out? Because it's an incredibly winnable division. I mean, Pittsburgh, as good of a story as Pittsburgh is, this isn't going to continue. I mean, the Pirates are, I'm pulling it up. The Pirates.
2011.
Yeah, the Pirates are 20-11. They're a game and a half over Milwaukee, who's 18-12. The Cubs are 15-15, 4.5 back. Cincinnati 13-18, 7 back. The Cardinals already 10 games back of the lead, but 8.5 behind Milwaukee, which is probably the team that you're watching. That's a huge gap. But Milwaukee's got issues as well, and they have decisions to make if they don't look like they're a real contender at the deadline because they've got some guys that are going to walk away at the end of the season, and they need to get something for them.
I mean, is there a path? Sure, because if you look at while Pittsburgh's 20-11, they've only played 11 games against teams above 500, whereas the Cardinals in their 31 games have played 21 teams above 500. I do think the schedule somewhat plays into this. But you just look at a team and you sit there and you go, all right, let's go through the rotation. I mean, are we really excited about Adam Wainwright coming back? Like,
no.
Yeah, he's, you know what I mean? Like, he's, you know, he is a significant part of this franchise, but like at the same time, it's like, if your answer to your woes is a 40-year-old that can't break 90 coming back, like, feels like you probably have some deeper issues. I mean, I think the biggest problem is when you get old, you have a tendency to get old in a hurry, and maybe more quickly than even you suspect. And I think probably another big part of this is, you know, you've got good players, but I think there's probably a leadership void.
I'm gonna switch gears in a second. I will say this: their run differential, which I think you can pay a lot of attention to. I mean, it can fool you, but run differentials typically, like the Braves, for example, 21-10, their run differentials plus 56. They're playing dominant baseball. The Dodgers have a plus 42. Pittsburgh is plus 38. So I mean, they're doing some things.
Well, the Rays are plus 113. Turns out a team that's 25-6 plus 113 seems to correlate.
Yeah, Minnesota's a leader at plus 23. The Rangers are playing very good baseball. They're plus 69 in a division that has 4 teams that are plus and one that is awful in Oakland at minus 123. But St. Louis is minus 19, which would put them at 4th in the division. The Cubs actually have the best run differential. They've just lost so many close games. They're plus 43. I don't know. I still think St. Louis has plenty of time, but you're right. They're one of those teams that they have some really difficult decisions to make as an organization if this continues into like mid-July and you look and you go, hey, we're not going to win. They got a bunch of old guys. They got to start thinking about, because they have some good young players, but they got to think about moving on. Speaking of doing that, I want to get to the NBA because more people I think are more interested in your thoughts on.
We've officially become a playoff sport. Agreed?
Yes, the NBA is a playoff sport. Yeah. The regular season only matters in terms of getting into the playoffs.
Yep.
That's all that matters is you get in, and that's it. Memphis got in, lost to the Lakers. It feels to me, and I know this is harsh, it feels to me like the Grizzlies are, maybe rightfully so, making Dillon Brooks the scapegoat for the early exit. And I'm curious if you agree with that, and if so, kind of your thoughts on whether that is a little too convenient, because it feels like for the Grizzlies to make that next move, to get to the Western Conference Finals, to get to the NBA Finals, to win a title, there has to be an overall maturation. It can't just be, hey, Dillon Brooks is gone. We're better now since he's out of the door. We don't have to change anything else. We're good.
Yeah, is this a simple addition by subtraction issue? I'm going to say no. There's a couple of things, though, with the Dillon Brooks story to keep in mind. And first, let's start here. The report did not come from the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies do not leak to Shams. They've never been a Shams team. Their team spokesman's Adrian Wojnarowski. When they want to leak something, it goes to Woj. So this did not come from the Grizzlies, and I was very disappointed. There's people that I think that are intelligent and informed that just ran with, oh, this is the Grizzlies trying to scapegoat Dillon Brooks. But it is also true, I believe, on Sunday that they came to that Dillon was informed he would not be back. Now, I don't think that he was informed under any circumstances. Like, I don't think it was some dramatic, like, don't let the door hit you in your ass. Like, you're not coming back. Like, I don't think it was like that. I think that a large part of the issue was Dillon wanted an expanded role. And he has been consistent in talking about, like, he doesn't like his offensive role. And I think that was the biggest reason why the Grizzlies, in the end, made the decision to move on. There is a role for Dillon Brooks in the NBA. It's just not what he wants it to be, or for it to be what he wants it to be, which is, you know, he's getting, if not the most shots on the team, the second most shots on the team. It's going to be on a very bad team. Now, the bigger issue that the Grizzlies have, nothing has changed from the deadline, Neil. They made an aggressive play to get OG Anunoby, and it wasn't enough. Now, it wasn't enough for anyone, so perhaps maybe you come back and now Toronto's more willing to make a deal now than they were at the deadline because they thought at the deadline they could use desperation. I know everyone keeps the pipe dream is Mikal Bridges. I just do not think the Nets are. I think the Nets want to build around Bridges at this point, and I don't see that. I don't see that being the option. So then you look at.
I think Brooklyn likes, even though they had a quick exit. I think Brooklyn looks at where they were when the whole KD Kyrie thing was going on, and where they are today, and I think they go, "Whew, we're in a better spot. Let's build around these guys."
Yeah, no, and I think that's a completely reasonable thing to do. Okay, so then you start to look at, okay, well, what are some other options? Everyone seems to be, I don't know where all the Chris Middleton stuff is coming from, because, and again, like, I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying I don't understand it, because Chris Middleton has a $40 million player option. Either he's going to exercise that player option, or if he doesn't, he's going to have more money either from the Bucks or from elsewhere. And the Grizzlies have a math problem. So with Middleton, I don't know. I think what it's setting up for, Neil, is maybe you're not going to quote unquote make a deal that wins the press conference, but it seems likely to me that Kennard ends up becoming your starting 3. Bane will play the 2, and then you add some type of vet with a mid-level exception. You know, do you bring Jay Crowder back? Perhaps. I mean, they do have they need someone in that locker room that can be the adult, and more importantly, they need someone in the locker room that Ja will listen to, and Jay does fit that mold. I still don't know if that's the best use of the money, but I think that's kind of where we're headed. And as disappointing as the season ended, I mean, I think you're starting to kind of see with context, like, you know, this Lakers team, you know, maybe it was unfortunate that you wound up playing the Lakers as the 7th seed, because, you know, do I think they're going to win a title? No. Do I think they're going to win the West? No, but it's looking like that was a fairly competitive 7-game series that ended up getting decided in game 4. And you had a 7-point lead, and you weren't able to close it out in the fourth quarter. So, like, maybe they're not as far off as the mood seems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think they're far off at all. I mean, I think they ran into a super hot Lakers team that figured something out late in the season. You and I talked about it one day. I think I was out walking the dogs, and we were talking, and I said, LeBron's kind of out right now, and the Lakers are sort of going through Anthony Davis. And when LeBron comes back, if he's willing to occasionally take a back seat and let the game go through Davis, the Lakers are scary as hell. And that's kind of what happened.
I give him credit because I didn't know if he could do that. Because late in the season, it did not feel like that's what he was doing. And I give him all the credit in the world. Despite all the Dillon Brooks noise and whatnot, I mean, LeBron settled for threes, but Neil, it's not been the offense runs through me. I mean, he has really been he's been a facilitator.
Oh, he has. Their game 1 win over Golden State, which was a terrific basketball game. He let Anthony Davis be the guy. I mean, he had moments where he took over it, but he did a lot of, like you said, a lot of facilitating. He plays a lot of good 2-man with Reeves. He makes sure that other guys get involved. And then there were some key moments in that game where LeBron 5 years ago would have justifiably been like, okay, I'm the guy here. I'm gonna take over now. And instead, they let AD do it. I think LeBron obviously is smart enough to know this is going to be a long series. He's going to need a lot of energy. He can't do all of this by himself at 38, not against the Warriors, and he's getting other guys incorporated. I think that series has a chance to go 7 games, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't think Memphis is far off at all. I think it comes down to this with Memphis. I really do. It's a star-driven league, and Memphis has a supporting cast around Morant. It has everything to do with Ja Morant taking that next step and becoming the leader of the team, a guy that's dependable, a guy that that's kind of out there 75 nights a season, who grows up, doesn't have the off the court distractions, is locked in a way that, I mean, if you look around the league and you look at the teams that are truly competitive right now, Denver, Boston, the Lakers, I guess Philly to some degree, maybe to a lot of degrees, but those teams you kind of know who you can count on, and those teams don't have a lot of off the court stuff. They're pretty locked in. I mean, you don't hear about Nikola Jokic being an off the court distraction. You don't hear about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown having issues off the floor. Everything's pretty basketball oriented. I mean, Joel Embiid's question mark is health, right? It's never other stuff, and that's what Ja has to do. And if he does it, I think Memphis is a contender. And if he doesn't, I think their window's going to close on them eventually.
Yeah, the only thing that I didn't really like about the narrative is that so much of the criticism should be directed more towards Ja than it should be. Like, it ends up becoming a quote-unquote, oh, the Grizzlies are young. That's not really fair to Jaren Jackson Jr., who is a professional. That's not really fair to Desmond Bane, who talks on the floor, but Desmond Bane's got like a young son. Like, he goes home to his house and like eats. This isn't like this isn't like too much of it should be focused at Ja.
Yep.
But there is inherent, in this city, there is this idea that if you have Ja, like, you can't criticize Ja because you'll run him out of town. And I know we talked about it last week. Like, at a certain point, he does have to grow up. I still think, though, in the end, I don't think Ja's going to wind up becoming this elite shooter. And I think that then begs the question, okay, what's his ceiling as a player if he's not an elite shooter? It's still a very, very good player. But name me the best player on a championship team. I mean, when do you think basketball really hand check? Is that when you think we kind of get into the modern basketball, when hand checking started to get called as a foul?
Yeah, probably so. Because you go back and you watch. I was talking about this with somebody else the other day. You go back and watch like those Bulls Pistons series when it was Isaiah Thomas and Lambeer and all those guys against Jordan and Pippen, and it was a totally different game.
Yeah, and so even okay. So if you say I'll even go back. Okay, well, let's say Bird and Magic when the NBA when it clearly becomes a viable product at that point.
1980.
Okay, so if you go back to 80, Isaiah and Steph are probably the only NBA champions where your best player's not 6'6", right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about it a little bit, but yeah, I think that's more than fair.
And Isaiah, I think you can put into a category, okay, well, the game was different, and Isaiah had a hell of a team around him. But with Steph, the clear distinction for me with Steph is a type of generational shooter that we've never seen. I just think you're going to run into the problems with Ja unless he becomes that type of shooter. Well, him being the best player on the team, you're always going to wind up in these same scenarios where in the playoffs, people are going to pack it in the paint, and he's going to have to try and go up over 4 defenders. Well, that hasn't really proven to be a winning formula. The thing that has been very obvious to me, though, during the playoffs, we can fantasy book rosters all we want. The thing that has really seemed to me to be the difference between winning and losing is shot making. And I think the Grizzlies have been too hyper-focused on, well, we've got to get someone that's switchable and can shoot. Well, Neil, how many teams out there want a wing that's 6'7", can defend every position? Oh, and he can shoot. Well, you just described like an awesome basketball player. Everybody wants that.
Yeah, everybody's looking for that guy.
You're not going to find perfect. I think that there just needs to be a deeper emphasis on them. If I'm adding guys, I care more about shot making because the Grizzlies have been very good defensively the last 2 seasons, and yet the same thing got them beat. They just couldn't make enough shots.
Yeah, I've listened to people talk about more specifically about the Thunder, but I think it applies to any small market. Their point is, whenever you have an opportunity to draft a big wing who can shoot it or who you think will develop a shot, you should take him in the draft. You should take as many of those swings as you can, hoping that you hit on 1 or 2, because you can always find a big in the free agent market who will come anywhere, because the bigs are it's a Steven Adams, a Nerlens Noel, those kinds of people. You can always get those kinds of guys in free agency because they're available. And you can find point guards to come be a backup point or whatever, but to get wings, and the wings are going to be the ones that get all the money. They're going to be the ones that, the Paul George type players. You're not going to get them to sign free agent deals for the most part in small markets. So if you can get them in the draft, you get them, and that's what to me is interesting about Memphis. They've got this, I think, incredibly underrated big in Jaren Jackson Jr., and they've got Ja, and they've got Bane, and you mentioned Kennard, who's an electric shooter. You wonder if, that's why I was curious about Brooks. I thought personally, if I'm Memphis, I bring him back. I just bite my tongue and I bring him back, and because he was a wing who can score. I mean, I know he shot too much and his shot selection sucks sometimes, but I kept thinking, well, maybe he'll kind of work his way out of that a little bit. And as a team, if you keep them together and let them have this quote bad experience of getting eliminated in the first round, that they'd come back a different team. That was the part that surprised me a little bit. I kind of thought they would just bring him back because he just made sense for their roster, and I don't know exactly how you replace him on the roster in a small market.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. Let's start first with Brooks because it's fresh on the mind. So with Dillon, I know behind the scenes, everyone keeps doing when Dillon was talking, they said publicly, they supported him. I know for a fact that a significant conversation was had with Dillon after the first comment about LeBron, which was a fairly innocuous comment. It's like, it was right at the start of the series. Like, oh, yeah, we'd like to play the Lakers. That'd be a good first-round matchup, playing a legend and 7-game series and knocking him out in the first round. I know that there was a significant conversation had with him about not doing that. And then he did the LeBron, he's old, poking the bear, all that. And so
you got to get 40 on me for me to respect you and all that, right?
Yeah. And so I think that was the moment. I think they were leaning towards not bringing him back in general. I think that was the moment that solidified it for them because they just decided, like, okay, well, we can't just have message not be received and ignored. The other thing that's important with Dillon, with the Shams report, the most interesting, or at least I thought the biggest detail in his report, and it went completely glossed over because that's how we are with the NBA, we're dramatic. The biggest detail that was glossed over was that the Grizzlies did indeed offer him an extension. We all suspected that the Grizzlies had offered him the extension, that the biggest extension they could, which was, I think at the time it was 4 years, $60 million, somewhere around there. Like, those are kind of the numbers, so 15 a year. Dillon's agent looked at the free agent wing market and said, hey man, the salary cap's going up. Like, we can do better than this. And so he turns it down. And by the way, both of those decisions, I think, at the time that they occurred, were the appropriate decision. I think the Grizzlies trying to lock up Dillon at that price point was an appropriate decision. I think Dillon turning that down at that moment in time was an appropriate decision. Well, now flash forward to January, where the Grizzlies now are starting to get healthier at this time, and you have Dez back on the floor, and the amount of shots that Dillon is getting is decreasing because Dillon does not need to be in the top 3 shot takers on on a great team
or on any team.
I mean, if he wants to go put up 30 shots on the Rockets, have at it, buddy.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
what I mean? Like, I don't care.
I can see him landing in Houston. By the way, that organization is so poorly run. They just. I could see the Rockets go, oh yeah, it makes sense. Let's add Dillon Brooks, and then Houston is the one franchise that has a chance to ruin Victor Wembanyama. They're it. Anywhere else, he's a superstar.
There's no question on that. But I do think it's also important to note, I think that started to weigh on him. The contract started to weigh on him. And then he started, this was more than just missing shots. He was clearly mentally in a funk. And he's always been a brash player, but Neil, like he's old, like I'm going to poke the bear. Like even by Dillon's standards, that was just so far out there. And I think we saw someone where, you don't know what that next paycheck's going to be. Like, I think we saw someone have kind of like a freak out. And I just think that's kind of, I think that needs to be kind of, when you apply like all the context, I think that needs to be remembered at least. And then, in terms of like what they do in the wings, it's fascinating because I think a big problem and a big part of, like, in the end, the Dillon Brooks issue, we've talked about this with football, we've talked about this, all the teams that we've covered, Neil. Half the time when you've got a player that frustrates you as a fan base, most of the time it's not that player's fault. It's usually the fault of the roster that player's having to have that role.
Yep.
The problem with the Grizzlies is they've been trying to improve that position, and they've not been able to do so. To your point about the draft. Well, the Grizzlies took a big swing on Zaire Williams. Didn't have a productive college season, but they tried to write it off as, it's COVID year at Stanford. It was weird. And we like his traits. Zaire coming into the season, like, there's some optimism. He'd gotten a little bit of playoff experience. He'd had a really good summer. And there was reason for optimism that maybe this guy, maybe not at the start of the season, but maybe by the end of the season, he could kind of take over that role. Well, he's a 21-year-old still growing, literally, and he starts the year off with that knee issue. And so it's 2 months off. He never gets going. And then he clearly got into a funk when he came back. And lo and behold, it's just a completely wasted year. I don't think the Grizzlies can depend on, well, maybe our answer is Zaire. But I think kind of the issue that we're seeing is, man, where they're picking in the draft, it's really hard for them to just take that kind of difference-making wing.
Agreed completely. A couple of quick thoughts before I get it. Someone has a Hugh Freeze question, and I do want to get your answer to it. Just kind of quick thoughts here. Philly wins game one without Joel Embiid. You're like, oh, God, Celtics, something might be wrong. Joel Embiid wins the MVP trophy, as he deserved to, comes back for game two, pretty ineffective, and Boston just blows Philly out in game two. Looks like a championship team in game two. A lot of dichotomy there. What do you sort of expect the rest of the way? Is that the Celtics team we're going to see the rest of this series, or is this going to be one of these seesaw deals?
My only concern with the Celtics is not roster dependent. I just, at a certain point when your head coach is your head coach because you had to fire your head coach and promote somebody that quickly. Like, he's had some into game stuff that you're like, man, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But if they can get past Philly, I mean, maybe I'm going to be proven completely wrong, and hand up if so. But I just am not afraid of Miami or the Knicks.
Mm-mm.
And maybe I'm being dumb with Miami because, hey, in the end, the two games that Giannis played fully, the Heat won both of them. And even game one, they won, but Giannis got hurt.
Well, speaking of coaching, we don't give Eric Spoelstra nearly enough credit.
I've been here. I think he's the best coach in the league.
I do too. I think he's
never
the single best one.
his teams never suck. And it's not like, oh, they do it with overwhelming talent. The biggest story to me, though, about last night, Neil, it's got to be the size of the knee brace, right? On Embiid?
On Joel Embiid, yeah. And he didn't move well. I mean, look, I mean, he is such an amazing player, and he's so athletic, and he, for his size, and he was a little clunky, and I thought maybe it's that, maybe he's not completely healthy. I was surprised they played him. I told Chase yesterday I would have sat him in game 2 and said, hey, we stole one. Let's buy another couple of days. Game 2 doesn't, quote, matter, end quote. The goal was to get one in Boston. We got it. Let's see if we can't get him completely healthy when we get back for game 3. And obviously they felt differently, but he did not look healthy to me.
I completely agree. And so then you wind up in this like weird situation of style of play because, credit to Harden. I mean, that performance in game 1 was unbelievable. I mean, that was just such elite shot making. And, that's the type of James Harden.
It wasn't a sustainable effort. I mean, that's he's not going to do that 7 times.
No, I completely agree with you. I just feel like Boston has more. Like when you just look at the rosters, Boston's roster looks better to me.
Denver's playing incredibly well right now. They're healthy. Jokic he didn't win the MVP, but he's been the MVP of the playoffs so far. He and probably Steph Curry. Is there any scenario where a Chris Paul less Phoenix team makes this a series, or is this potentially a quick out for Phoenix?
I mean, to me, the other thing about the Paul injury was he's playing and they're up 8. He pulls his groin, and then all of a sudden they can't do anything offensively. To me, they're in the same spot that the Warriors were in when they had Durant and you get injuries. When you trade that much to go and get, essentially the elite 3 or 4 guys, your bench is just going to be just so bad. And we saw that, like when Paul went out, even though, like, let's be clear, Chris Paul is nowhere near like peak of his powers, Chris Paul. But the drop off from him is just so bad. Like they couldn't even just get into offensive sets. And obviously Durant shooting as poorly as he did, and then Booker finally cooling off, like that had something to do with it. But it just feels like the rest of their roster is not up to snuff. And then further, like it still feels like with the Suns, there's still kind of a figuring it out process. Like they don't seem comfortable on the floor yet to me.
Yeah, Ryan Russillo made a great point in his podcast earlier in the week that they still look like a team that's figuring out the new guy. And
I think that's a Simmons point.
What's that?
I think that's a Simmons point. No, they look like they're still figuring it out.
Yeah, I just think they don't have chemistry yet. And you've got these 2 elite players in Booker and Durant that are both kind of ball dominant, and you've got Chris Paul out there who's absolutely ball dominant, and now you're like dependent on Cameron Payne in a series against a Denver team that has been together for a long time.
Yes, I'm with you. And again, I could be proven wrong on that. Like I still want to see, like, okay, they still haven't lost at home yet. I'm kind of in this mood where when someone goes up 2-0, it's like, all right, I got to see them break serve first. But Denver to me looks like they're clearly the best team in the West.
I agree. I think they're the favorite over whoever wins this Lakers-Warriors thing. And here's the thing. If Denver wins quickly and the Warriors and Lakers have to go slug it out for 7 games, there might not. I mean, whoever it is going to take it to 6 games. But Denver might just be so fresh that it might be too much for them to overcome. All right, we got a question. I know you got to go in a minute, so I want to get to this. Fabius wants to know, says, I'd love another Jeffrey take on Hugh Freeze. For example, does he get a kick out of his being at Auburn, and does he agree with another podcaster, and I don't know who he's referring to, that Freeze has no desire to hurt Ole Miss football?
Is he referring to Godfrey? I don't know. I'm not listening. Godfrey did a solo show on Freeze, and I'm not listening to that.
Steven is still pretty obsessed with Hugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steven feels like, I don't know. I guess if I were talking to Steven, I would say, like, I think Steven feels like Hugh ruined his reputation and hurt his career in ways that I don't think is true. Like, Steven seems to me to be doing pretty well. But again, like, that's he's got more information.
Yeah, I think Steven feels like he had a lot in that NCAA thing, and that it never got the traction that he thought that story was going to get for whatever reason or reasons. And I think there's some, I don't know if it's bitterness. I think he was frustrated that Ole Miss stonewalled him at times the way that it did.
Yeah, I think he feels used by Ole Miss. Sure. How do I feel about Friesen at Auburn? I don't. Maybe, and again, hand up, I could be wrong. I'm just not worried. Everything that I see, I don't think the Auburn job is nearly as good as the expectations are. It's obviously still a good job. But do I think he's going to beat Alabama and Georgia? No. I mean, you're already seeing, like, look at his first, like, public comments about, I just didn't think recruiting would be like this. And I just don't think he is cut out for, I think he is a relationships guy. And relationships, in my opinion, is code for under the table. And I think now it has become such a business, and it is a matter of how much money do you have in your salary cap? And Auburn, I don't think is there. I mean, he's never developed a quarterback. Everyone he doesn't have a scheme advantage anymore. And particularly, like, in tight games, he's not great. He gets tight too. And once the pressure starts to ramp up, I just don't think he's cut out for that world. I think he should have stayed at Liberty and made $5 to $7 million for the rest of his life.
I agree with you. I mean, I know he wanted to get back into the SEC. He was putting out feelers. If Kiffin had taken the Auburn job, he was going to campaign hard for the Ole Miss job, even though he would not have had any chance. If Mississippi State had opened up, he was going to go after that job hard. He wanted to coach in the league again so bad, but he had it made at Liberty, man, because he could outcoach people at Liberty. They were going to be able to outfund those types of programs. He was going to dominate that league, and they were going to pay him an absolute fortune and treat him like a deity. And he's in for a rude awakening at Auburn if it doesn't go well, and go well fairly quickly. They don't care about anything there except the whole winning and winning the Auburn way and all of that stuff. And look, Saban and them might be starting to turn the lights off a little bit, but the lights are awfully bright, and it's going to take a while for them to go out. But Georgia, and you got to beat Georgia at Auburn too. Georgia's a damn force, and they're going nowhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but like I everyone makes the joke that like I'm obsessed with him. I don't even really think about him that much anymore. Like it used to just drive. Part of me pushing back as strongly as I did was there was this narrative that like he was just this perfect fix out there, just waiting for someone to like snatch him up and save them. I just don't believe he's that.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, I know you got to go. What are you guys talking about today?
Oh boy, your guess is as good as mine. Probably Star Wars. Yeah.
Are you a Star Wars guy?
I am a Star Wars guy, but I'm not the Star Wars guy that shoves Star Wars down your throat.
Yeah, I had no idea. As well as I know you, I didn't know that you were a Star Wars guy. As a kid, I liked the movies when they came out in the theater and stuff, but I've never watched any of the new ones. I just haven't been able to get myself into that.
Yeah, you'll be okay. I think your life will be. You can die and your life will still. You'll be okay.
Hey, man, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
All right, be good.
That was Jeffrey Wright on the myperfectfranchise.net hotline. I'll take some of you guys' questions in the stream and at rebelgrove.com here in just a minute. First, I do want to tell you that we're brought to you by Lake Hill Motors in Corinth, Mississippi. It's a family-owned dealership in operation for more than 60 years. They have a service department with more than 100 years of combined experience. When another dealer can't repair something, the manufacturer usually sends it to Lake Hill Motors. If you're looking for motorcycles, four-wheelers, side-by-sides, scooters, generators, wave runners, lawnmowers, compact tractors, and more, Lake Hill has it from Honda, Yamaha, Bobcat, Hyson, KO, and other name brands. Contact Michael McCullough in Corinth at 662-871-6918 or visit him in person at 2003 Highway 72 East Annex in Corinth. Walk On Sports Bistro puts everything they've got into bringing you game day with the taste of Louisiana. Dig into their mouth-watering, made-from-scratch Louisiana cuisine, po' boys, gumbo, voodoo shrimp. Check them out in Oxford or Ridgeland today. The College Corner's your one-stop Rebel shop. They got 2 locations in the Jackson area. You can also reach them at collegecornerstore.com. Also on Facebook and Instagram. We'll have a hand raise, guys, tonight. Like I said, it is pre-recorded. It's brought to you by Comer Heating and Air, Southern Air Conditioning and Heating. If you live in Oxford, Batesville, Tupelo, or that area, call Comer 662-801-1777. If you live in Hernando, Memphis, or that area, call Southern 662-429-4429. A-Stock is a Nashville-based online retail company with the mission to provide customers the power to name their price. All items at A-Stock start at just $1, no matter what the retail value may be. So shop now at astock.bid. Again, that's astock.bid. Brought to you by Solutions RX. It's a probiotic, multivitamin, and supplement company created by Ole Miss Pharmacy alum Chris Cornelison. Check them out on solutionsrx.com. They're also available in local independent pharmacies across the continental U.S. Use the promo code OEP at checkout. Get 10% off your first order. It's graduation season. Dead Soxy has your favorite grads' feet covered. Every journey begins with the first step, so make it count. Gift your grad premium Dead Soxy socks. Get 30% off using the promo code Rebel Grove at deadsoxy.com. Game Changer patches are the only 2-patch system available in the market. Stop hangovers before they start. The warm-up patch used before or while you drink. The overtime patch used after you've been drinking to recover while you sleep. The all-natural ingredients will keep you in the game, ready for your next play. Go to GameChangerPatch.com and enter the promo code RebelGrove20 at checkout for 20% off your purchase. Austin says, hey, Neil, I hope you're doing good, man. Quick question. With all this realignment talk this week in college football, do you think the SEC stays at 16 going forward? I don't. I appear to be somewhat in the minority on this. I anticipate in July at SEC Media Days in Nashville that Greg Sankey is going to talk about this. I've always found that Sankey is very careful, but he's somewhat cryptic. And I think sometimes if you just listen to his answers and put your opinions aside and listen to him, you get the impression that he knows what's coming. I'm on record here. I don't know how long it takes. Maybe it takes another 6-7 years. Maybe it only takes 1 or 2. I think the Pac-12 is falling apart. That's obvious. The Big Ten's going to add Washington and Oregon at a discount. That's going to put them at 18. I think you're going to see the Big 12 add the 4 corner schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah. I think is who it is. And then after that, Notre Dame's asking for $75 million a year from NBC, which I took as an absolute fascinating gambit on their part. They're either going to get it or they're going to shop, likely to the Big Ten. And if that happens, the SEC has no choice but to go raid the ACC at that point and get the schools that they've targeted for quite some time: North Carolina, Virginia, and then whoever else. And then, man, if you're left over after that, good luck to you in this market with the streaming money and the TV money that the Big Ten's going to get, that the SEC is going to get. If you're left out, even the Big 12 is going to get a decent amount. If you're left out beyond that, it's going to be hard to compete unless you're willing to admit that you're a Sun Belt caliber school. Let's see. Triple Mass says, do the Cubs bring up Mervis this year? And when does Morrell get back up? Yeah, I think not to delve too deep into the Cub stuff because people are tired of it, but I think if you watch them play, and I've watched most of their 30 games so far, they're 15-15 heading into today's finale against Washington. Hosmer's not playing well. He's a butcher at first base. They keep talking about the Gold Glove, but the Gold Glove was a long time ago. He's not hitting at all. Mancini's hitting, and actually hitting fairly well, and Mancini plays a decent first base. I think a Mervis-Mancini platoon where Mervis gets most of the first base action and where Mancini plays some first base, can DH some. I think that makes a ton of sense. And then Christopher Morel has to come up soon, the way he's hitting. I mean, at some point, a prospect just calls himself up, and I think Morel's about there. And the problem for Morel with the Cubs is where do you put him? Because last season, they moved him around. They put him at second. They put him at short. They put him all over the outfield. But this year, they're a little more settled. I mean, you're not taking Dansby Swanson out of the lineup. You're not taking Nico Horner out of the lineup, so that eliminates the middle of the infield. Patrick Wisdom has 11 home runs. Just missed his 12th last night. You're keeping Wisdom's bat in the lineup. You could DH Wisdom. You could put Morel at third and let him be a consistent third baseman, and he's adequate there. He's best in the outfield. Last year he played a lot of center field. He's not going to play center field now with Cody Bellinger playing the way he's playing. And you've got long-term deals with Seiya Suzuki and Wright and Ian Happ and left. So those guys are playing that position, and Happ's having a great season. So the problem for Morel is just kind of where he fits, but he's hitting to the point where you have to figure it out. But they have no choice on Mervis. Mervis needs to come up. Plus, Matt Mervis is 25 years old. He's not like a 21-year-old where you can excuse the whole, hey, we're going to give him some more seasoning. It's time for him to play. So I think that happens sooner rather than later, especially if they keep losing one-run games where Hosmer is completely unproductive in big moments the way that he was last night in the ninth. Let's see. We had some questions at rebelgrove.com. Fabius wants to know any and all informed opinions regarding the linebacker position at Ole Miss this fall. So they've got Kari Coleman and Ashanti Sistrunk back. They added Monty Montgomery from Louisville, Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste from UCF from the transfer portal. They've got Suntarine Perkins coming in the fall. Look, I'm never going to pretend to be the football expert, but watching as much as I did in the spring, I was concerned about linebacker. I went into it kind of concerned about front seven, thinking front seven was going to be a big issue for them. And actually, I think they're better up front than I thought they would be. I think they're better up front than Lane Kiffin thought they would be. Linebacker's a concern. Montgomery's a good player. They might have struck gold again for the third time. Chance Campbell, Troy Brown, and now Monty Montgomery. Jean-Baptiste was a pleasant surprise. The other guys are, you know what you get in Ashanti Sistrunk. He's dependable. He's not going to be a big-time playmaker. Coleman was good at times last season. I just think unless Perkins comes in and is super impactful right off the bat, and look, he's good enough to do that. That could easily happen. I just think you have to be careful counting on true freshmen, even great true freshmen. And I think Perkins will be a great player at Ole Miss. But when you're counting on true freshmen, that can be a mistake. I think, though, that if you look at what they're trying to do in the portal, which appears to be mostly counting on and adding some defensive backs, maybe they feel better about it than they thought they would. They're a little thin, but that probably applies to most teams in the league right now. It's really hard to build depth with the transfer portal. It's hard to build quality depth when guys can jump in the portal as quickly as they can. So, all in all, I think they're okay at linebacker, but they're going to have to score points. I don't think it's going to be a great defense. Rebel RX asked if the Cards are done at 10 games out. Jeffrey talked about that a little bit. I don't think they're done, but I think they have some real issues. It's hard to watch them pitch night in and night out and feel like it's a certainty that they right the ship. Got a lot going on there. You got to think that some of the bats in their lineup that are struggling are going to get hot and come around. It's just early May, but ask me in a month. They have another month like the one they just had. They'll be buried. Hattiesburg Reb says, thoughts on Bruce Pearl's comments this week. I assume you mean his political comments. One of the things I like about Bruce Pearl is that there's more to him than just basketball. I like that he has a willingness to express his political views, especially in an environment where those views are probably not widely accepted. I always think his thoughts are well thought out, and I wish more people felt comfortable expressing themselves politically, and I wish there was less pushback when people do. But you get a lot of people in my field kind of push back on Pearl and say, stick to sports, stick to basketball. I don't think that's fair. I just don't think it's fair to do that to people. I mean, he shouldn't have to. His life shouldn't be only basketball. That's ridiculous. Let's see. Chase isn't here to discuss the 500 days of summer. I don't even know what that is. North Tampa says, if you were Mincy, referring to Ben Mintz, what would be your next move, both short-term and long-term? So for those who missed it, Ben Mintz, who's a friend of our podcast, was fired by Barstool, I guess, late yesterday after his, I think it was Monday morning show that he read the lyrics to a rap song. The lyrics included a racial slur that you just cannot say. And he said it. And at the time, I watched the kind of the tape of it, and you could tell right away that he knew, this was not good. I was a little surprised just based on kind of Barstool's sort of rebellious reputation. I think that's fair. I'm not a big Barstool guy. I don't pay a lot of attention to it, but I respect what Portnoy and all those guys have built. They've made a ton of money, and they have a unique product. I was a little surprised that he was fired. At first, when I listened to Portnoy yesterday, I thought it was a bit of a gimmick, and then I realized that nope, it wasn't a gimmick. It's real. He explained it. Said Penn viewed it as something that could cost them licensing, and Penn's dependent on licensing, and I felt terrible for Ben because obviously Ben made a mistake. I've gotten to know Ben a good bit over the last couple of years. Ben's not a political person. Ben is not a racist at all. He's not even someone who thinks like that. He's just kind of this goofy guy who fell into success in a way, but he had worked so hard to get to that place. And what I really hated about it was that if you just in the last week, Ben had raised a bunch of money for charity with his 10K that he ran in 57 plus minutes. He's lost a bunch of weight. He's gotten healthy. He's been sober for a couple of years now. He's been open about his struggles in the past, and I just hated it. I hated it for him. You just can't say that word. You can't do what he does, which is be on camera all the time and say that word. It's something you just can't do. And he did it. And even though he was the part that I really hate, and I'm not excusing Ben for it, but I don't know whether he got sort of set up. Did somebody, I don't even know what I don't watch the shows. I don't know whether that's a regular segment where he reads lyrics, But if that was the case, you'd love to think that someone said, hey, man, understand in this particular song, there's a word that you can't say. You know what that word is. Don't say it. Skip it. And that didn't happen, obviously. And yeah, someone said you could see his soul sort of leave his body. You could. You almost could see right away him go, oh, God. And there was no coming back from it. And it just happened. I hate it. I don't know what else to say. What would I do if I were him short term? Probably lay low. I wouldn't go on some grand apology tour. He's already apologized. It wasn't a malicious thing. I think everyone knows that it wasn't a malicious act on his part. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He's apologized. That's enough. What does he do long term? I don't know, because I think it was mostly jokingly, we're like, hey, you should try to hire him at Rebel Grove. And my response was, to do what? I mean, he doesn't cover anything. We cover sports. I'm our lead football guy, and Chase helps with football, and I cover basketball, and Chase covers baseball, and I help Michael Luker with recruiting, and we have other stuff that I don't know what Ben would quote cover. And then in terms of podcasting, I don't know what podcast Ben adds. That's his thing, is that I think he had found this perfect job for him at Barstool, and there's not really another Barstool to go to. So I don't know where he goes from here, but he's a resourceful guy. He knows a lot of people, especially in Louisiana, and maybe he can land something in that market where he's beloved and where he's kind of found a home in Baton Rouge, New Orleans. I'm hoping for his sake that that's kind of what happens. I agree with some people who say the punishment didn't fit the crime. I agree. And for Barstool, they kind of have this brand, and now the brand sort of takes a hit when you fire him for that. Brought to you by ACS, Automation and Control Systems, LLC. It's a complete electrical control systems solution provider based out of Baldwin, Mississippi. You can reach them at acsllcms.com or call 662-601-4381. I'll have a Mind on My Money brought to you by Pinnacle a little later today. It's mypinwealth.com. We're also brought to you by John Edwards, Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. If you're thinking about traveling this summer or the holidays or whatever, you want a trip that creates a lifetime of unique memories, get in touch with John, 901-494-3387 or jedwards@regencytravel.net. If you're coming to Oxford anytime soon, make OPA a part of your stop. Fabulous food, craft libations as well. It's Oxford's newest Greek restaurant on the square. It's a great place for lunch, dinner, just a place to hang out at OPA on the square in Oxford. I got a mailbag that I put up late yesterday. It's brought to you by Whitney McNutt of Tommy Morgan Incorporated Realtors, serving you for all of your real estate needs in Oxford and Tupelo. Whitney sells condos, land, commercial, and residential family homes. You can reach her at 662-567-2573 or 662-842-3844. We're brought to you by Service Specialist Staffing and Recruiting Agency. If you're looking for a job, they can help you. If your company is looking to hire quality, hard-to-find talent, they can help you as well. 662-832-5138 or servicespecialistltd.com. You can get the beautiful, healthy smile you deserve at Corinth Dental. They've got advanced treatments, including implants and Invisalign. They'll help you with achieve your smile goals. It's corinthdental.com. Again, corinthdental.com. And then we're brought to you by Southern Traditions Farm. It's a 68-acre, 32-stall upscale equestrian training and boarding facility in Canton, Mississippi. You can learn more about them on Facebook or Instagram at Southern Traditions Farm. Let's see if anybody has anything else. There's a lot of talk about Mintz. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done there. I don't know what the conversations were with Barstool and Penn. When Barstool sold to Penn, they made a ton of money. They got into the gambling space. It was a big deal for them, but obviously they handed over a lot of decision-making power at that time. And I'm curious to see what happens with Barstool, because I think Ben was very popular there. that's part of their thing now. And Portnoy, to his credit, said as much. Dave Portnoy said yesterday that he told Penn that this decision had a chance to sort of crater Barstool, because that's it's kind of their rebellious brand in a way. So the whole cancel culture kind of thing. Austin says, hey, Neil, in all seriousness, I'm thinking about going on AG1, referring to Athletic Greens. Is it worth it? And what benefits do you see from it? Look, I like it. It's worth it for me. I'm obviously was trying to lose a lot of weight. I'm now trying to kind of keep that weight off and just make sure that I stay healthy and that kind of thing. And AG1 for me is just kind of a good way to start the day. It prevents me from not really fasting as much as I was, but I still skip a lot of meals. I think it kind of helps me, frankly, not get super hungry, and helps me not overeat and some of the stuff that I've done in the past that made me as fat as I was. So, yeah, it works for me. It's good for your gut health. I think if you do a lot of exercise and working out, whether it's AG1 or some other equivalent, unless you are a really disciplined eater, I think it's a major help. My thoughts on Hunter Elliott's injury handling, I don't know. I don't cover the team. I don't know what all went on behind the scenes with that. I know from talking to people that Hunter was pretty obsessed with the idea of getting surgery from the very beginning. And I think initially he felt like it was going he felt like, at least what I've been told, is he felt like there would be a full tear when he went and did the first MRI, and that wasn't the case. And they went and got a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth opinion, and it was a partial tear. And I just don't think Hunter completely trusted the rehab process, completely trusted the idea of moving forward without surgery. And he just didn't feel like he could air it out, if you will, is what I've heard. Obviously, he pitched the against LSU 40 pitches or whatnot, and didn't look like himself, didn't feel like himself, was very frustrated. And then I think after that, they felt like there was probably a setback. And I think it was just one of those things where he felt like for him to pitch and be who he is, he needed to get the surgery. And again, as I said at the beginning, we're going to find out whether this was a full surgery, the full UCL, or whether it was this newer procedure that some doctors are doing. That's kind of a bridge, is how I've heard it referred to. It's kind of a partial reconstruction where a pitcher can be back in 8 to 10 months, as opposed to where it is now, which is kind of that 12-month thing. Obviously, from an Ole Miss baseball perspective, he's done for this season. The question is, could he be back in March to pitch SEC play? I think that's certainly possible. That's probably the hope. That's probably the plan. Just it's a matter of different people come back from that differently. And so that's what we'll find out. We'll know more about that, I think, in the coming days. And Chase will learn more when he talks to more people. I heard about this yesterday. I called Chase. I was like, hey, you need to work on this probably right now. And it turns out it was right. So he'll find out more. It's only about 14, 15 hours that he's known about it. Tyler wants to know if prescription support and Solutions RX has medicine for type 1 or type 2 diabetes. Just go to solutionsrx.com and give them a call, contact them, and you can find out. Last couple of things. JM says MRIs are not 100% conclusive for UCL tears. He was just not confident in the words that he was told. And, look, when I've never thrown 90 plus miles an hour, but if you're a pitcher and you have a partial tear, and every single pitch you're thinking, is this the pitch where it pops? Is this the pitch where I tear it? I don't know how you can, as a 19, 20-year-old guy, I don't know how you can put that in the back of your mind or take that out of your mind. I think that's just front of mind at that point. And, you know, he wants to pitch in the major leagues. He has the ability to pitch in the major leagues. I'm sure this was something that was just weighing on him. And you hope for his sake that the surgery is successful and that he comes back healthy and confident, and whether that's at Ole Miss or whether that's professionally or whatever, that he gets the opportunity to do that. But very clearly he was not able to trust that the rehab process was going to be sufficient. Simple as that. I can't judge that. Nobody can. It's his decision to make, and he and the people around him made it, and you wish him the best. Georgia says Mike said after the Little Rock game he didn't know anything about Hunter. I don't know. I don't cover that team. I'm not around them, so I can't speak to that. Let's see. Yeah, Triple Mass says he umpired a lot of Hunter's games when he was younger. The kid seemed to throw every game. The damage is done with these young guys in travel ball. We can pretend that's not the case, and it's not across the board in travel ball, and that's where people push back. There are absolutely coaches and programs that are absolutely careful with young guys not to overthrow them, and they protect them. That is absolutely the truth. It is also absolutely the truth that there are lots of programs and coaches that want to win the South Haven U13 tournament so bad that they will absolutely hurt a kid. Period. I've seen it. So, I can't speak to what Hunter's background was. I don't know. But you look around and you see all of these injuries in college baseball. There's tons of them. Look around the SEC. There's so many teams that are now down 2, 3, 4 pitchers on their staffs with elbow injuries. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. These are guys that when they're 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, they're pitching way too much all year. They're throwing way too hard. They're throwing pitches that they probably shouldn't be pitching yet. There's too much emphasis with a lot of travel teams. There's too much emphasis on winning, frankly. You know, you know as a travel coach that when these guys play high school ball, when they have Tupelo or Oxford or Corinth or whatever across the front of their jerseys, they're going to play really, really hard. They're going to try really hard to win. There's a lot of school pride in young people. You see it. I see it in soccer. And you know when they go play travel ball, when they play club, that the emphasis there should be on development. It should not be on winning a stupid tournament that nobody's ever going to remember. And that happens a whole lot. I'm not saying it happened to Hunter, but it happens a whole lot. Georgia Reb says Chris Beard will work his tail off. I might have missed one. Oh, Matt Browning says, let's see, how optimistic am I about what Chris Beard is doing? He's working his ass off. I'll tell you that. They are recruiting relentlessly. It is nonstop with that staff. They are around the clock recruiting, rebuilding a roster. But we talked about this. There's a lot of NIL challenges right now with everybody. The cost of player procurement in the transfer portal is higher today than it was a year ago, and that's a challenge. They have said consistently over there that they're going to rebuild the roster at their pace. They're not in a hurry. So, I think they'll bring guys in. They'll have a good roster. I think they're going to be a contender to make the tournament next season, but there's still a lot of work to do, and it's a very competitive landscape. The SEC is going to be very good, but he has said consistently that if it takes till August to put the roster together, he'll take his time and wait till August. He's not going to do a lot of reaching. So there's a lot of basketball. I think 3-4 spots still available on that team, and they'll fill them. Last couple things, are we going to have McCready and Siskey? Yeah, we're going to be live today at 2. We'll tape again on Monday, and then we'll just have one show next week. I'm going to be out of pocket the end of next week. So it'll be a short podcast week for me next week, both here and with McCready and Siskey. So I'll be out after Wednesday. I think that's it. So we'll shut it down there. There was one more question that I had. I think it was Austin says, if I were president for 24 hours, but everything I put into law would stand, what would I do? I don't know. Believe it or not, I would be a very common sense, pragmatic leader, which is what I think our country desperately needs. And right now, those types of people can't get the nomination in either party. And that's where we're flawed. The extreme on both sides is what dominates. Even though I think the overwhelming majority of the American populace is fairly moderate about most things. I think most people are fairly commonsensical, which is the crazy thing about why we're so crazy right now. I think you can blame it on media, you can blame it on social media, but most of all, you can blame it on the two parties. Both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are run by the extreme. And so there's no middle ground. And that's how you get some of the election choices that we've had the last few cycles, and probably what we're going to get again this time. So anyway, thank you to Jeffrey Wright for his time today on the Oxford Exxon podcast. Again, Chase and Brian have a podcast that's up in the feed. You can listen to it. It's not on stream. You can listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you get our podcast. I'll bring you a hand raise, guys, tonight. Chase talked to former Ole Miss walk-on football player John Williamson, who's now the bowling coach at Vanderbilt. They just won their third national title. They talk about bowling, the science of bowling, how it's unlike amateurs that are out on Friday night at the lanes, and talk about Tim Corbin's baseball staff and some of that kind of thing. So some talk about life as well. I'll put that in the stream this evening, and that will be the Friday Oxford Exxon podcast. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Oxford Exxon podcast. So until then, I'm Neil McCready. Take care.